About a year ago, the entire country was captivated by a Netflix documentary about a guy named Joe Exotic, the Tiger King. And it was probably because we were all under quarantine and we needed something to occupy ourselves with and talk about. And it was kind of one of those weird unifying moments where we all learned about this guy who ran his own zoo and this legal battle that he was in with this other woman who ran her own zoo. And then this crazy underground zoo ring where they, trafficked exotic cats. And it was crazy. It was a crazy story. And we're going to look at it this week on the show. So if you were one of the few who did not see the documentary, strap in because this is a great story. It's Our Weird World.
Our Weird World.
Welcome to Our Weird World. I'm your host, John Henson, and this week we're looking at the story of Joe Exotic. Like I said, if you didn't see the documentary, this is a crazy story. It's up there with Bob Berchtold, if you remember that, one of the first few episodes of the series. It's just crazy. There's just insane twists and turns at every corner. And look, if you did see the documentary, stick around because there are a couple of extra details in my version of the story that didn't make it into the documentary. And so even if you saw the documentary, you'll still get some more bonus coverage, I guess, for that story. So yeah, I think you know what time it is. Joe Skribvogel was born in 1963 to a wealthy farming family in Kansas. And after he graduated high school, he decided to start a career as a police officer. But there was a small problem with that. He was, at this time, living this secret life as a gay man. And look, it's Kansas in the late 70s, all right? This is part of the Bible Belt. You just ain't one of them gays, all right? And, being gay in the American Midwest, especially, even today, is not exactly the most welcome thing. But that's what Joe was doing. And he started working as a police officer, but one day his brother kind of outed him to his dad. And at that point, Joe's dad actually forced him to promise that he wouldn't attend his funeral. That's how offended Joe's dad was that his son was gay, that he's don't come to my funeral when you're dead or whatever. That's probably how Kansas people talk. Joe was devastated. All right. And as soon as his father told him that, he basically went out in his cruiser and slammed into a concrete barrier in an attempt to kill himself. And the car nearly flew over the edge, but it didn't, and then obviously Joe survived the wreck. Following that, Joe quit the police force and moved down to West Palm Beach, Florida, where he got a job at a pet store. His new neighbor down in West Palm Beach worked at an exotic animal park, and Joe quickly fell in love with the idea of running his own zoo. A few months later, he moved back across the country to Texas and started making plans to actually build and run his own zoo. In 1986, Joe and his first husband, Brian Rhine, bought a pet store in Arlington with Joe's brother, Gerald. Unfortunately, in 1997, Gerald was hit and killed by a drunk driver, and Joe then sold the pet store that he had opened in Texas and used the money that he won from the wrongful death suit to purchase 16 acres of land to open a zoo in Wynnewood, Oklahoma, which is a small town about an hour south of Oklahoma City. When word got out that Joe had opened an exotic animal park, people began dropping off the exotic animals that they no longer wanted. It's like he opens up this zoo, and instead of getting flocks of people to visit the zoo, people just started dropping off these crazy animals that they didn't really want to take care of anymore. Whether it was crazy deer species or exotic cats or, giant snakes or whatever. It started with a deer and a buffalo. Like people had buffalo as pets, not like raising them on a buffalo farm, but like probably stole a baby buffalo from a buffalo farm, if we're being honest. And then when the buffalo got too big, they had to get rid of it. The deer and the buffalo were then followed by a mountain lion and a bear, because I guess apparently people in Oklahoma are absolutely insane. Who's keeping mountain lions and bears as pets? I mean, you could probably imagine it, but really, like, how do you rationalize that in your mind? I'm just gonna keep this bear cub. This bear won't grow up to be 3 times my size and try to kill me. No, there's no way that'll happen. In 1999, Joe went down to Dallas to transport a flock of emus back to his zoo. But when several of the emus escaped and made a break for the freeway, Joe quickly grabbed his gun and shot 6 of them. All right, this is one of the crazy stories that wasn't mentioned in the documentary. Like, this is before everything got crazy. Like, Joe is down in Texas. These emus are just running off across the prairie towards a busy interstate, and Joe just grabs his shotgun and pops 6 of them off. Although the SPCA was highly offended by this, as they should be, Joe was never charged with a crime. And then when Joe accepted 2 abandoned tigers in 2000, he fell in love and decided to make big cats the main feature of his operation. And within a few months, Joe was this local celebrity in Oklahoma. But he realized that no one was going to be able to pronounce his name. Like, no one's going to think, oh, Joe Skriebvogel, Tiger King. Like, it just doesn't have a good ring to it. So that's when Joe changed his name to Joe Exotic. And he also bleached his mullet blonde and added multiple silver hoop earrings to his ears, shaved down to a handlebar mustache, and then just got a bunch of very poorly drawn neck tattoos. When Joe's husband died of HIV in 2001, he began dating JT Hartpence a few weeks later. And this was one of those details that I really don't think got enough attention in the story. It's like Joe's husband died, all right? And then a few weeks later, he's just over it, and he's dating someone else. Like, I don't know. Maybe people grieve differently. Maybe people move on much faster, process death a lot easier. I don't know. That just seems crazy to me. Like, I don't really know anyone who, if they lost their significant other, would be dating someone seriously a few weeks later. It's just really weird. But Hartpence was a former event producer, and he encouraged Joe to take his big cats on the road. And again, this is another part of the story that I don't think they really covered that much, is even though Joe was running this zoo in Oklahoma, he was also doing this road show where he was taking big cats to, malls and stuff, where or he was going to fairs and shopping malls, and he was allowing people to come up and pet, his tiger, which sounds like a euphemism, but it's not. He had like actual tigers there, and he was allowing people to just come up and pet them freely. But Joe wasn't the best at following the rules, and he received several citations for violations of Animal Welfare Act standards. And in 2011, Carol Baskin, founder of the Big Cat Rescue in Florida, got tired of Joe's mistreatment of the cats and began organizing protests at his shows. All right, so now this is where kind of everything starts. In response to the protests that were being organized by Carol Baskin, Joe literally stole the Big Cat Rescue name and logo and began holding shows under that name, so that people thought, and I mean, it's kind of brilliant, but also super illegal. Like, he just took the Big Cat Rescue name and logo, kind of modified it just slightly enough, and people then just began assuming that it was Carol Baskin doing these shows. And Carol then sued him for the trademark violation and actually won $1 million. Now, the big sticking point there was Joe didn't have $1 million. All right. The fun line from there is, I will never financially recover from this, and he couldn't. Like, he had no way. Like, the zoo was doing fine, but it wasn't making enough in profit because the overhead was so high that he was going to ever come close to being able to pay off the $1 million settlement to Carole Baskin. So Joe and Hart Pence eventually broke up, and he then met a guy named Travis Maldonado, a former meth addict from California. Joe quickly fell in love with Travis, and he and his other boyfriend, John Finley, were married in a 3-way ceremony in 2014, which is not legal at all, by the way. But, I mean, Joe was just living by his own rules at this point. So, you know, he's already got this one guy, Joe Finley, who wasn't even gay, by the way. Like, Joe was very manipulative in this sort of way where he could take these meth addicts, because that's what they were anyway, in Oklahoma, and, you know, give them shelter, give them food, give them a job. And, you know, he was very outgoing. He was an affectionate dude. Like, I don't know that he was this way on purpose. I think he was just kind of a dumb guy, but he could convince these straight men to be his boyfriend and do all of the gay sexes together, but because he was providing for them, and he was able to do a lot for them. And so he's now in this like dual marriage with John Finley and Travis Maldonado. And Finley, though, he got jealous of this. Like, even though he was straight, he also didn't like the fact that Joe had another boyfriend. It was weird. Like, they didn't explain this super well, but like John Finley was adamant that he was straight. But he also got so jealous of Travis Maldonado that he assaulted Joe in the Zeus parking lot a few months later. Sure. Okay. And eventually, John Finley and Joe Exotic broke up. And having lost another lover and dealing with more legal trouble, Joe actually started feeling paranoid that Carole was sending spies to the zoo. He started this online video series and began publishing videos that featuring himself brandishing weapons and playing with explosives. He even addressed Carole specifically as he held a gun to a blow-up doll in her likeness, calling himself, quote, the most dangerous exotic animal owner on this planet. And he promised that if Carole ever tried to bring him down, she would, quote, stop breathing. Sounds like a threat, right? Sounds like some things that you probably cannot say and get away with without some police coming, knocking on your door, seeing, you know, hey, what's going on? On March 26th, 2015, the alligator compound at the zoo exploded, boiling all but one of the alligators alive. No one was ever charged with this, but Joe really believed that an animal rights activist led by Carole had committed the crime. Maybe they did. Probably not, though. I kind of tend to think that he did this, right? Because he's losing all this money. The Carole Baskin is just relentless in her smear campaigns of Joe, and he's got like all these animals require food, and the food's expensive, and it's probably just easier to kill a bunch of alligators. And, you know, you boil some gators, guess what? That's some good eating right there for some of your other animals, but maybe for yourself, because gator's pretty tasty. In addition to, as Joe's paranoia grew, he began picking out people in his life that needed to die. Like, he really started looking at everyone kind of, in his life, figuring out who was after him. And he realized some people needed to die, and Carole was one of them. Crazy enough though, like, while all of this is going on, Joe got really involved in politics. In 2016, he ran for president and actually received 962 votes. Like, 962 people, probably in the Oklahoma area, actually went to the polls and voted for Joe Exotic for president. Like, and look, that's, you know, it's the 2016 election, so it's Trump versus Clinton. I kind of get it. I don't blame people in Oklahoma because it's like, and, you know, it's like you have Trump who, you know, for all of his business acumen, does a lot of gaslighting and probably says a lot of really inappropriate things that someone of a distinguished title as president of the United States probably shouldn't say. And then over here, you have Hillary Clinton, who, first woman president, was kind of like the only thing she really had going for her. You know, she like, I don't really remember her promising to do much to improve things. You know, it's just like, hey, remember Bill? And things were pretty good then in hindsight. I can probably do some of that. I don't know. And so at that point, you're just kind of like, well, this old gay tiger fella, he can't do any worse than them two. I'll just give him my vote. That's it. 2 years later, obviously because he didn't win presidency, 2 years later, he ran for governor of Oklahoma and received 664 votes, which was obviously not enough to win that seat. Well, things just kept getting crazier. And on October 6th, 2017, Joe's husband, Travis, died after accidentally shooting himself in the head. And this was one of the most shocking, but also kind of like darkly funny parts of the documentary because they caught this on camera. Basically, Travis was telling the employees at the zoo's gift shop where he worked that there was this theory that was circulating on the internet that if you took the magazine out of a Ruger pistol, even if it had a bullet in a chamber, the gun wouldn't fire. And he's telling employees this. He's like, here, look, I'll show you. Click, bang, dead. And it was caught on security. It's caught on security footage. And God, it's kind of funny. Sad, very sad, but also kind of funny because all you see is one of the employees. He's just sitting there, his jaw is on the floor, and he's like, and look, feel bad for this guy because it's got to be highly traumatizing to see someone kill themselves right in front of you, whether on purpose or on accident. But God, man, it's just. I don't know. Maybe I'm a terrible person for thinking it's funny. I thought it was kind of funny. The loss of now 2 husbands to death really made Joe lose interest in running the zoo. He really got depressed, and he felt as though his entire life just merely involved putting his exotic animals on display as a way to solicit donations to keep the zoo in operation. Like, he wasn't making a profit. He was literally just day to day, just trying to make enough money to cover the expenses. And a couple of weeks later, after Travis's death, Joe prepared to make cage space for new incoming animals by taking 5 of his oldest tigers and executing them one by one. The documentary kind of, leaves this up to speculation. There's a lot of evidence to suggest that he actually did this. Mainly because there's a quote from Joe saying, if I knew it'd be this easy, I'd just blast them all. Or however he talked. He had a weird accent. A few days later, Joe really started to ramp up his plot to have certain people killed, namely Carol. He offered an employee named Alan Glover $5,000 to do it. Glover then went to speak to another associate of Joe's named James Garrettson, who was a strip club owner in Dallas. And Garrettson, when Glover told him this, Garrettson alerted the FBI, who then arranged a meeting between Joe and an undercover agent. Once Joe kind of explained everything, it kind of seemed pretty obvious that Joe had paid Glover to go kill Carol Baskin. Joe was then arrested. And after what was a relatively short trial, he was charged with attempted murder and 17 animal rights violations, and he was sentenced to 22 years in prison. Now, as I record this, Joe is attempting to get a presidential pardon. That's because, as I record this, Donald Trump is still in office. I don't see it happening. Maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't. But basically, if Joe does get out, he's kind of promised to really expose all of these other independently owned zoos and all that. But I think the craziest part of this story is behind us. And with that, we're out of story time. So that's the main story of Joe Exotic. What's crazy is I actually was on a road trip through that part of Oklahoma, and God, I think I took that road trip in 2018. So kind of at the height of when everything was just kind of starting to collapse. And it was kind of right around, I think, his run for governor, and just him kind of falling apart there. And I really regret not knowing this story beforehand, because if I had known about this story when I was traveling through Oklahoma, I 100,000% would have stopped at this zoo just to get a firsthand account of everything that was going on there. But I didn't. It's a missed opportunity. So let's see what we learned.
What did we learn?
Number one, Joe lost 2 husbands to death. Not sure if either of those husbands were legitimately also gay or if they were straight like John Finley was. But first husband died of HIV, and the other one comically shot himself because he thought that if you took a magazine out of a gun, even if there was a bullet in the chamber, the gun wouldn't fire. Fact, apparently guns will still fire even if there's not a magazine in there. So, gun safety, you guys. Number 2, there are apparently a lot of independently owned zoos across the country, and they are probably doing some real sketchy stuff with their business practices. Number 3, something new. We're switching up a little bit this week. Joe, in addition to a lot of his online videos, which you can still see, they're still all up on his YouTube channel. Joe was also a recording artist of sorts. I hesitate to use the word singer because I don't know about that. But Joe wrote and produced a couple of albums worth of material. And it's possible that he got a professional singer to do it, and then in his music videos, he just lip synced over it. That I wasn't super clear on. But here is a little taste of Joe Exotic.
Woke up this morning with the sunshine in my eyes. All the clouds are gone and took the rain that came inside. I can't believe the way I feel about the day. All the bad is gone and all the good is here to stay. All the reasons I can point to and all that I can see, because you love me, because you love me, because you love me, because you love me, because you love me.
Yeah, see, isn't that sweet? Love how I kind of hit the post there before as the song got started. A little radio lingo for you. I know what I'm doing. No, so yeah, that's one of the songs. The music video for this song is equally as bizarre because it's just him, and it's like people at the zoo are in on it, and it's weird. He's also got a song in there about Carole Baskin killing her husband, which I know that's what you guys were waiting on. He's like, "Oh, you totally forgot about Carole Baskin. Killed her husband." Yeah. Well, look, this episode isn't about Carole Baskin. It's about Joe Exotic. Did Carole Baskin kill her husband to get enough money to then run her own big cat rescue and marry the most submissive, creepy weirdo ever? Probably. Look, maybe. I don't think. A lot of people think Carole Baskin murdered her husband. I don't think she did. I think that she definitely paid someone to do it, which is probably also the same as her killing her husband. But I'm hoping that more of that story comes out and that she is just the subject of an episode all on her own someday. But yeah, that's the thing. I chose not to really focus on that because, again, this episode's not really about her. So yeah, wow. This was the biggest What Did We Learn segment, and I think we've learned a lot today. So let's wrap it up. Next week on Our Weird World, oh boy. So, hey, guess what? You remember how David Parker Ray was like the worst story I've ever told on here? Maybe you thought Albert Fish was the worst story. Maybe Andre Chikatilo. I've got a story that might top that. All right. It's the story of Joseph Fritzl. And basically what he did was he kidnapped his daughter and held her captive for a very long time. And there were a lot of things that happened during the time that she was kidnapped that we're going to get into. And it's awful. It is really bad. And yeah, we're going to power through it, and we're going to get through it next week. So again, thank you all for listening. Keep telling all your friends. That'd be cool. It'd be pretty sweet if you did that. And keep it weird.